Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dine with the Divine. I'm your host, Ashley, and together we're going to be exploring the magical, the mystical, and everything in between. On today's episode, we're going to talk about John the Conqueror and the goddess Oya. I hope everybody's having a great week, and if not, I hope it gets better soon. So, today's guest is Mawyiah Kai El-Jamah Bamani, and she is an award-winning writer, educator, and spirit woman. Mawiyah is an 8th generation witch, Igun medium, and priestess of Oya in the Yoruba system of spirituality. Mawiyah's writings have appeared in Thicker Than Water, The Crab Orchard Review, Beyond the Frontier, Family Portraits, African Voices, and Essence magazines. Ooh, so fancy. Mawiyah is the host of Fish Head in Red Gravy, a podcast dedicated to celebrating marginalized people of the esoteric and occult world. And Maui is the author of the newly released Conjuring the Calabash, Empowering Women with Hoodoo Spells and Magic, published by Llewellyn Worldwide. And these days, Mawiyo may be working on her middle grade series titled The Cool Beans Ghost Hunter Society, exploring the inclusiveness of the special needs superhuman teens. Oh, I love that. Or hosting the podcast Fish Heads in Red Gravy, dedicated to celebrating marginalized Black and brown people of the esoteric and occult world. Mawiyah, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing? It's so good to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. As I asked mostly everybody, how did your kind of spiritual, I see, like you said, you're an 8th generation witch, but how did it start for you? When did you get into everything, and how did that go?
Well, when I was young, probably about 5 or 6 years old, I could see spirits. And my mom, who also could see spirits at an early age, we were born with the veil of skin over our eyes. We call it a caul. And she helped me out with all of that. It wasn't like, oh, don't talk about that. It was, okay, let's process it. I see them too. And I knew that eventually you would. And so she talked me through how to have my own time, how to help them out, but also still remain a child, very much a child. Definitely don't go to school and tell, because I was in Catholic school, don't tell the nuns that out. But she was into tarot. She was into astrology. And so it was much easier. And growing up in New Orleans, there's lots of Vodun culture. There's lots of Santeria, the big mixture of everything. And so I think for me, and like a lot of people, it was very easy to fall into that path. Nobody was saying we need to rush you to a priest or anything like that. It was really understandable and nurturing. And like I say, at that early age, I could see them. And in the house we lived, it was always a lot of, I guess, people, the way I recognize it now, who didn't quite make it to the Underground Railroad. So it was that kind of energy that was still residual in the home. And so it was this passing of information, like, can you tell my relatives or whatever that I'm still here, that I'm trying to get to them? That kind of energy it was. And so, so from a very early age, it was really just listening and being a voice for them as much as I could, and helping them pass on as much as I could with my mother.
Wow. Okay. So you literally were like a psychopomp from when you were a little kid. That's awesome. As you grew older, and I just asked this question because I find that, well, for you, it may be completely different because the way you grew up is very accepting, and that's awesome. A lot of people sometimes have like a dip in their like spiritual path where they're just like, you're like a teenager or a young adult. You're I don't care about this so much right now. I just want to be cool. Yeah. And then you come back to that. Did that ever happen to you, or did it stay strong the whole time?
It was still there. I still wanted to, like, you just want to experience things that teenagers do, right?
Yeah, of course.
You want to listen to our music and want to have fun. So it was a lot of doing that because I learned early how to turn it off, not accept it for this period of time. Throughout a lot of my high school years, it was that. I really wanted to fit in. I wanted to hang out with the other girls, the cool girls and things like that. It was a lot of just me putting up that wall for that period of time. When I got closer to graduating high school, I saw that I needed to pull back to that information, that energy, because we always lived near graveyards. And so that's that Oya energy we talk about. And so it was just this pull to remember to go back to this source for my future. And I see it coming full circle now. So I think for me, turning it off for a bit just to try to have a teenage life and then going back to it. Yeah, I did experience that, but it wasn't I don't think for me, it wasn't so much I felt like a weird kid,
Mm-hmm.
but growing up, I really felt like a superhero. Like you have something
Yeah.
that somebody else really doesn't have, but because it was nurtured, it wasn't
Yes.
that I had to hide it. And so I felt like it was an extra something that I had, but I still wanted, like you're any kid, you still want to do those things, those
Yeah.
fun things. Later on, growing up, like I said, high school, 12th grade, it was that urgency to get back involved in it, to understand what lessons am I supposed to learn for my future as an adult.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So then you obviously you write, and you write for a lot of these different magazines, which is really awesome. Like really popular magazines. I'm so impressed. Like, I'm like, wow, you're like so cool. So beyond writing your book, so you wrote this book, Conjuring the Calabash, and it's all about empowering women with hoodoo spirits, magic. What inspired you to put that book out?
Culture. And at first it was like, I just want to just do for myself, my family, sort of, I didn't want to, it was a lot to just talk to other people about what's going on in their life. And it felt like I watched stuff on TV, but I didn't want to be that involved with other people's lives.
Yeah.
Like what? But when I started doing it, I found that people really were receptive and they felt like it was really helping them. So then the pandemic happens, right? And so you have a lot of people who are feeling like, I can't go to church. I don't know what to do. And a lot of women were really feeling that way too, where they were at home with the kids and other things. And they just really, they didn't see a sense of purpose for themselves. And so I had a lot more clients who were not in the spiritual realm, but they were more Catholic or Baptist, but they were like, somebody told me about you kind of thing. Like, I just want to, no, I'm not, I want to see. And so the more I started to work with them, they would tell their friends and so I would ask, is it okay if I kind of jot down what we've talked about in terms of how this might help other people? And so that's what kind of formulated the book, just from those conversations with people. And then thinking about my own background and how growing up in it, it's really different than somebody coming to you and trying to figure out how it would impact their own lives. And so it was a lot of explaining to people that it's not something scary. Nobody's going to put on a black robe and march you around into a room nude, things like that when you see on television. I'm like, this is really, it's spirituality. It's being one with the universe. And it's allowing you to see that you don't need a building to shape your ideas of God or your connection to God or goddess or whatever type of energy. And so for a lot of them, it was just opening up to something new and something that allowed them to go to their pantry and pull things from, to really feel good about themselves and to empower themselves. And I always leave them with the fact that you're your own minister. You can be in control of those things for your own personal life. So that's where the book came from. And the more women were coming back and saying, I feel the shift in my life, I thought that it should be shared. Just thinking then about how do we get it out there when we're talking about Black and brown people, right? How do we get it out there? And a lot of people were like, we have white people that have already said this stuff. Why do we need a Black person to do it? And I'm saying, but because it's a Black practice, right? So we need Black people to talk about Black things. And not some AI generated Black person that you create. As I did my own research, I would find that there were people who were not real people. And it was just this whole need to constantly say, no, they need to see this. And then it was this idea, well, do Black women buy books? And I'm like, what? You won't believe the stuff I heard. And it was just proving to people that we do want our stories. We will go to those sections in the bookstore, the metaphysical sections, but we when we go, oftentimes we're like piecing together other people's story to try to make it fit into our little Black worlds. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. And it's easier if we find someone who looks like us, who knows our story, knows our past, and will intertwine that into what we're doing, into our magic. And so that's what I really had to express to anybody when I was trying to send it out, workshop it or whatever, that we really want to see ourselves. And it's hard for us. A lot of Black women were coming saying in the workplace, I'm just as educated as the next person, the white woman, the white man. And I get shitted on, basically, right? If I mess up, why did we hire you? That's the mentality, right?
Yeah.
Why did we hire you? You're so dumb. It's like you were just freed yesterday and you can't get this work done. But if a white lady messes up, a white woman, it's usually, oh, it's a blind moment and it's laughed off. And so it's a lot of that kind of stuff that I really felt like I needed to have in the book to give us that, I got to get up today. I got to fight this and move on. And yeah, I tried to break the book up in workings that were easier for people to do. And I didn't want anybody to feel turned off if they were not initiated to a path, because it's not about that. It's about really understanding the magic, and that magic doesn't really require those kind of things. It just requires our acceptance.
Oh my God. You said so much. Oh God. Thank you. I love that. I was just actually telling somebody the other day, like my friend who is white, and explaining to her that, like, I literally, and this is my whole life, and I feel like a lot of Black and brown people, we do unconsciously do so many things that when we explain it to people who aren't brown or Black, they're like, what? Why would you do that? You're like, I'm like, oh, when I walk up to people and I'm explaining stuff, I just expect them to think that I don't know what I'm talking about or that I'm dumb. And she's like, why? I was like, cause that's just how it is. And she's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. I was like
why? Same here. When I talk to people, my coworkers or my friends who are white, and it's like, why are you white? Because you really start to second guess what you're about to say.
Yeah.
The words that come out of my mouth, I really have to replay it, right? Because you're thinking to yourself, I know when this comes out, there's going to be questions. Somebody's going to look like, really? And you want to go back and start a Google on the side if there's something you don't understand. Because you don't want them to think, well, what's wrong with her? Why doesn't she know this? And so it's always that. And I will say to them, well, you don't have to do that. And even when you walk into a room, there is this whole aura, this whole presence. You're thinking everybody's looking to see where is she going? What is she going to do? And that's something that they never have to experience. And so I tried with the book to have workings where it empowered us to the point that when we do walk into a room, we're able to get that energy, to feel that energy, and to be like, I belong here. Even if we don't say it, just to have that reassurance that it's okay. It's okay. If you're the only one there, then you're going to shine like the only one there.
I love that, because I was just saying the other day, I think I put it on Threads. I was like, I need to walk around with like confidence of like cis het white man, because like cisgendered heterosexual white men, they just like walk in anywhere and they're like, I need this done. And people are like, yes, sir. And I'm like, how does this happen?
I like the guy, the meme when they were talking about Beyonce with her music, with her new country, and the guys dancing, they're like, look at him. He's like, he's a gay guy, but he's white. And he's like, oh, he's just walking around in the room and everybody's looking, but he doesn't care. He's got his head on and his little hip huggers and he's just doing his thing. And so you want to be able to walk around with that kind of energy, because it doesn't matter where you go, but it could be to work, it could be to a restaurant, you could be McDonald's. You walk there and you're the only one and you're like, oh my God, they're all looking. You know what I'm saying? If I do anything wrong, it's got to be, oh, what is she doing here? You know? So yeah, I took that into account with the smaller workings, like they're called Juju on the Fly. And the Juju on the Fly workings are things that you can do take about 5 minutes before you leave for work or wherever you're going. And they give you that extra push to just navigate through the day and navigate through whatever you have to do and things like that. So even that, and with the glamour magic for us, making sure we say our mantra and we look in that mirror and you're so fly, and laying out our clothes the night before and putting crystals on there just to give us that extra push to say, I have it. I got it. I have everything I need. And even with the book, there's a playlist on Spotify. So those songs too will help. And they're not like you think like Gregorian chants or anything like that. Popular music for us, right?
Yeah.
And there's something on there we can find. There's even meditation, things like that. But there's a lot of music that we can just groove to and still be in that headspace of magic.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. So I want to ask you, how has for you, do you still live in New Orleans? Are you in that area?
We live in Louisiana. After Katrina, we moved to the northern part of Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
We had little kids and we needed to get them back in school and stuff like that. But we still go back and forth. My family's still there. And so it's a lot of traveling back and forth because we miss it. My husband and I both are from New Orleans. So we're like, we can't stay away forever. Yeah.
I find that, so I live up north and it's a different situation. I know, like, when it comes to, it's like up here, when it comes to Ifa or Santeria, it's usually like Hispanic communities, people who are Puerto Rican or Dominican practicing it. So you don't find a ton of there are Latino and Latinx people. But my experience so far when I know people from the South,
Mm-hmm.
when you bring up like Ifa, Santeria, ATRs, DTRs,
Mm-hmm.
they're very much like a lot of them, not everybody. Now I feel like it's a lot better. But I feel like before people are like, oh my God, that's so bad. That's so bad. Don't ever talk about that. Oh my God, it's so bad. And you're like, but like these are like, I feel like people in the
Right.
South are like, you guys are there. Like your ancestors are there with you. I'm like, embrace that. So have you seen like people receive your book well who come from like the South? I just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people, yes. And actually, both Black and white people have received it well.
Mm.
Now, what I have found is that sometimes there is a lot of talking about it at first, because even though, like we talk about with people, Black and brown people, it's still that fear, it's still that stigma because of colonization and everything. So the idea is that, yeah, that's something, but we don't do that. But so what I usually do is I start talking about different things that maybe happen in your home. Like, have you ever heard of anybody? It could be something like covering the mirrors. And they'll say, well, yeah, my grandma does that when there's a thunderstorm or when somebody dies or whatever. And, you talk about that's conjure, that's hoodoo. And so you get into different things that maybe an elder did, and a lot of people remember those things, right?
Yes.
Well, we don't call it that. And you say, that's what it is, right? But in the same token, they'll say, well, but we go to church. I'm saying, well, a lot of conjure people do, right? And they still, and that's the thing about hoodoo. You can practice Santeria, you can go to church or whatever and still have that practice. Marie Laveau, she used the cathedral to do a lot of her workings in. For a lot of people, there is still fear. And that's why with the book, I didn't want to give it a heavy dose of Ifa or something. Yeah. I wanted to introduce those elements to show the overlap in our spirituality. But I wanted people to feel like, I can do this, and this is something, and it worked. And to really come into it that way. It's like when I was younger, a lot of people, girls, and they would come into African culture through African dance. Yeah. And then they would started wanting to dress and wear the head wraps and everything. And the more they learned about those things, then they wanted to learn about the spirituality element of it. And so I think that the appreciation for who we are in our African past, the fear, I understand the fear, because if we're not colonized mentally, then we have freedom and liberation, and we want to fight for those things. Absolutely. Who was it? Napoleon said, religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich. So as long as we're bound by religion and not spirituality, then we'll never grow. When we become more spiritual people, then we're more accepting. And so I try to talk about it that way with people when they start to look at it and go hoodoo, when they see that on the cover. Because I've had people say that, oh my goodness, you're writing a book like that. It's going to be this. You're not going to make it to heaven. You're going to do this and that. And then we start to talk about some things that they have done in their lives. Or if I'm wearing a certain necklace, they'll say, oh, I know that's an evil eye necklace. I know. And this and that. And then you start to talk about the overlapping. And then they go, oh, really? I didn't know that. And then they'll start to give you more information. Well, in my family, we do this and we do that. So I have met that. And I try to always meet it with factual information. Talk to the elders. Why did they need to do those things? Well, because they didn't have people who tended to their needs, our trauma of enslavement. We didn't have doctors who were going to say, okay, I'm the therapist. Let's talk about you being enslaved. That didn't happen. So we had to have the root workers and the conjurers to deliver our babies, to do all of these things for us. And so this was our liberation magic. It helped us to stay sane as much as it helped us to get free.
Oh my God, I have chills all over my body. That's so good. Okay. That's so good. It's so true. And we've talked about different types of folk magic from all over the world on this podcast. And it's exactly what you're saying. There's always somebody who'll be like, oh, but that's like a negative thing. But people are like, yeah, but remember how your grandmother always does X, Y, and Z? And they'll be like, yeah. And they'll be like, why? Like, I don't know. She just always does that. I don't know what the answer. Like, I don't know. And then it's like, well, why do you never step on a crack? If you cut your hair, you have to put it somewhere else and make sure nobody touches it? I don't know. My grandma always just told me to do that. And it's like, but why? And then when they figure it out, they're like shocked. They're like, oh my God. Right. And then you ask them, well, how did those things serve as grandma? Did grandma look like somebody who was demonic? you know what I'm saying? Did she grow horns in the middle of the night? Those kind of things. And they go, well, no, my grandmother's a sweet person. How dare you? Well, because she always had something that serviced her outside of the church, right? She didn't wait till Sunday to tell everything to the preacher. Can help me. She managed her own life, her own spirituality. Yeah, exactly. And like, and like you're saying, like you said before, there's so many people who do spiritual practices who some of them don't call them that. They might just say, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is like a folk thing, or this is just what we
Mm-hmm.
always do. And then there's a lot of people who do it and they're the first person to get to church on Sunday and the last one to leave, and they go to every Bible study. It doesn't mean anything different, but it's just through millennia, like you said,
Right.
in
Right.
every place in the world, it's just how people dealt with stuff, no matter where you come from.
Mm-hmm.
Some people somewhere have probably been conquered, and then in the case of African American people, were enslaved, and they were like, well, how are we going to get through the day? Because
Right.
this fucking
Right.
sucks. Yeah.
Right. Right. You take the word hoodoo, as I've been taught, and itself, people get scared of it, but the word itself is about who did what to you.
Mm,
And into hoodoo. And so when you say that to somebody, or somebody says that this person has been hoodooed, the goal is to find out, well, what is the witness? What is the
yeah.
tag lock or the thing that they use to do this to you? Why is this happening? So there's a whole process. Like when you go to the doctor, right? My hip is bothering me.
Yeah.
There's a whole process you have to go through to find out what's wrong and how we're going to cure it. And so
Yeah.
hoodoo is just that intricate. And so for a lot of people as well, you think about those folk magic practices, especially for Black and brown people, we don't really get to, it's not really thought of as high magic as
Yeah.
much as Western magic is. And
Mhm.
so I think that when we talk about it, Black and brown people talk about it, it's that thing that they do. But somebody else takes it on and it's like, oh, well, it's this great thing now. And
Yeah.
so and that also, I think for a lot of people, it shuns them away from wanting to do it. It makes them feel like, oh, that's not really magic. I don't want that book. I want the book on Wicca. I want this other
Yeah.
thing. But we have to start looking at the beauty of our own practices and why they were necessary, and then how they're overlaid with Native American practices. Africans coming from all different places. And so you have the Native American influence, you have whatever's there with the Western influence that's already there. And then you have all of the different African regions coming together to actually make sure that this gumbo of magic is sustainable for everyone to understand. And so that in itself, when you study the history of it, it makes it a beautiful process. And I think that for a lot of people who want to study magic, they have to really see that this has a place too. Just like all of those other practices that have lots of books on the shelves, this has a place too. Because for a lot of us, we get turned off. We want the most expensive pair of jeans, right?
Yeah.
We want the most expensive jacket. If it's cheaper, but it looks like it's a good quality, we still go, well, I don't want that. It doesn't cost a lot. And so that's the way we go into our magic. Has it been there long? How many books are on the shelf? I don't want to buy that.
Yeah.
And so we start to move away from it. But this is what has really sustained us. And we need to go back to it.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, I don't like to use the word easy because I feel like when people say easy, it makes it sound like cheap, and that's not what it just means. That it's accessible. People, and again, not just African Americans or Africans or Caribbeans, but people who are common folk. Most of us come from common folk, right? Common ass people. Like, so
Right.
they had what they had. It was, they couldn't, they had eggshells because they had eggs, and they had flour. Yeah. And they had certain herbs because they grew it, or it was just easy to get and it was cheap. So yeah, they couldn't always go buy the most expensive waters and perfume. No, they just had it. Yeah.
And think about it. If you're on the run, if you were an enslaved person and you're on the run, you don't have time to look for I don't want that herb. Let me go over here. You have to pick up what you can grab, right?
Exactly.
And so we bring that into modern day. And that's what a lot of women are saying about the book, is that it's stuff I already have. And I say, well, I don't want you to have to run out to the fancy metaphysical shop unless you want to. I want you to be able to use what you have. Okay, some work great with different color candles, but if all you have is a white candle, use it. It's about your intention. It's about how much you connect with the magic. And I tell people, you have to be magical every day if you want your magic to have any kind of efficacy every day. And so that doesn't mean get a black robe out and start marching around the house, things like that every day. But what it means is, if you get up to fix your coffee, you might say something over your coffee. You may say something over it for everyone in the home. You're getting ready to take a bath. You may whisper a prayer into your water, those kind of things. And I say it's magical because think about it. If we needed to borrow some money from my grandma, And we never talk to grandma, right? We hardly ever call her, maybe once a year. And we call her and say, grandma, the first thing comes out of our mouth is, can I borrow $100?
Yeah.
And she's like, you don't call me. Kind of thing. You don't have this open. But the other kid who maybe calls grandma once a week, check in, maybe goes to visit, they call, they could ask for 500. Grandma's like, come on over. There's that open line of communication. And that has to happen also with our magic. And so every day, if we're working to be magical people, we're transforming our lives. One thing that I told a sister once, she was having trouble with the boss. And I said, get up in the morning, get your cast iron skillet out. She said she had one from grandma. Put some water in it, boil, let it boil. Write that person's name down 9 times on a brown piece of brown paper bag and say over that what you want to happen in terms of them leaving you alone. Now, we're not talking about ending them, but we're talking about possibly maybe that person can get a promotion somewhere over across town and leave with faith. And so she did that. I said, you're gonna work it. You're gonna work it every day for 9 days. Then you're gonna redo it at the end of the day, at the end of that session, after the water's all boiled out, toss it in the trash, get another strip, do it again. And so within a month, that person was moved from that job and she had a more pleasant space. But I told her, I said, in addition to all that, remember how you've been working magic every day? You get up in the morning and in her coffee, she would say things about how she was going to have a great day, how nobody was going to be able to offend her or hurt her or talk her. And that's working the magic. And so that made her magic work for her when it was time for her dire need of magic.
Yes. That's so poignant. And I think it's so important for people to know that, because a lot of people, like you were talking about before, like it's great if you can have the most expensive thing. It's great if there's nothing wrong with that. But to just have that connection every day, your magic gains so much more power, so much more efficacy, I'll say. Just by like, and and to me, I'm like, if somebody's like, well, how can I engage every day? Like literally the most simple way, like one of them is the way you just said, speaking it into existence, and even just like prayer. If you like to pray, if you like to talk to your deity, to your creator, whomever you like to speak to, just literally as simple as like, hey, God, person, whatever, thanks for letting me wake up today. We're going to have a great day.
If you feel crazy, because I've had people say, well, I can go outside. I don't want to take the dog for a walk, and put your headphones on like you're having a conversation and sing your prayer. You know what I'm saying? There are ways around that. So you won't feel like a nut. And you can do that and then make that your everyday thing that you do. And that is still being in communion and opening the universal space. So that when you have something to be said, you need this help. I really need this. You're not cracking open a book for the first time saying, oh, this didn't work. You know, you're not, you have the potential to make it happen. But that's what I always tell people. They say, well, it didn't work. Well, how familiar is magic with you? How familiar is the universe with you? Does it know you like grandma? We talked about that. I'll say that to them. No, I don't have time to do it every day. Yes, you do. Yeah. You do have time to do something every day. On your drive to work or ride to work, you could still be saying those mantras, listening to that song and holding that image in your head of you achieving all those things that you want to achieve. That's magical. And that's how we transform our lives. We can't just do it when we think we want to. Okay, now I want it. Work for me. Do it. Make it happen. It's not going to work that way.
Exactly. And I always tell people, no matter how hard it is, you want to keep working towards your goal. And I'll be working towards something and I'm like, God, you see me, right? You see me, I'm trying. What? He's like, yeah, girl, calm down.
You're ready to raise your white handkerchief and shake it.
Exactly. He's like, relax, just keep doing it. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but keeping that line of communication is open and is so important. And I just think, real quick, before we move on, just because this has been so interesting, I was just thinking about how we did an episode a while ago with this lovely Elohim, and we talked about charm bags and mojo bags. Yeah, I love him. He's so sweet. Talked about mojo bags. And I was just thinking about, so when I was like reading and researching, there was a plantation, I believe in Virginia, where they found like a whole bunch like buried. And I was just thinking, man, like, because you were talking about somebody saying like, oh, I did this and it didn't work. But I'm thinking about people, enslaved people, having to deal with all the crap they had to deal with all day. But to make a mojo bag and maybe the madame of the house yelled at you yesterday, but when you saw her trip that morning, you were like, it worked. And like the
comfort in those little steps of things, right?
The comfort thing. And it's like, it didn't take, and we talked about this too, like when I was talking to him, like, it's not that you need to use expensive stuff. Maybe she had a little rosemary here. She had a little this, a little that. And I don't know why I'm saying it. It could be anybody, not just a woman, but like the person who did it, they had it and they were like, this thing is going to work because it's going to bring me comfort. And then the fact that magic too, it's people like, oh, it works or it doesn't work. You just have to know it's going to work and it's going to work somehow for you.
Right. And maybe you have to just leave that intent. You can't just sit around knowing or run it. Oh, are you going to work? I hope you work. You can't do that because now you're taking 2 steps forward, 2 steps instantly. And you just have to just agree with the universe, make that pact. This is going to work. However it's going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just let that be. Just like you said, the tripping. Yeah, that worked. Yeah. Because for that moment, they got that comfort in seeing her. She fell on her ass. You know what I'm saying? They got that comfort in knowing that. And it didn't have to be that she tripped and she broke her leg and now she won't be up. It didn't have to be all of that. It's just small comfort. And we gradually work and you find lots of them so that they were constantly working it. So that's what that tells me. They were constantly working it. So it was working.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't working.
Right. It was working. It was working. So, and that's what I want people to understand. Also, I'm glad you brought that up because oftentimes people, when they get scared of any ATRs, they start to think the first thing they want to throw out is the whole thing about killing people and that kind of thing, or possession and all that kind of stuff. And so I want people to understand sometimes the transformation of life is minor things, right? Just moving that person to another building or another place across town so I can have peace. Those kind of things are things that I always encourage people to think about. Because a lot of times, even if they're not within this culture and they come from the church background, that's the first thing they want to say. Oh, can you kill that bitch? Or whatever.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute.
Like, what? Now tell me what's going on. I'm trying to get them because that's their perception of what we do, right?
Yes.
And so I walked them through the fact that we have things that we don't do either, right?
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to have things that you shouldn't want to do, right? So we're both going to be culpable if we do that, right? Not just for me. And to let them see that there are other things that can happen for you to have some peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't have to resort to those extremes. But yeah, that's what they'll come in and say. Isn't that what happens here? No, that is not what happens here. You watch way too much TV, right?
I know, like you want to be like, you think I murder people? Why?
What am I, the mom?
I know. I was gonna say, it's like you're like, I'm a mom. Oh, that is so funny. Don't kill people, but then
So I'm like, no, we're going to talk about what would help your life have some peace in it, or your children's lives, or whatever. How can we work that? And also allow this person to move forward with whatever they're doing out of your space.
Exactly.
Right? That's what we do.
Because that's what we actually want. Yeah. Nobody's gonna die.
Yeah. In the bed, none of that.
None of that. We don't do course. That's the mafia. And that's a whole nother situation. You can just go to Brooklyn. So because we're going to be talking about Oya a little bit later, we're going to talk about a popular Brazilian dish, which is also common to be a offering to Oya. So if you're Brazilian, you can scream at the podcast as you listen to it because I'm going to pronounce it wrong and I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. It's called acarajé. Let's just call it that for now. Sounds really good. So they're like fritters. So in the filling of this fritter situation, you have an onion, chili pepper, some shrimp, palm oil or olive oil. I don't know if you guys have palm oil in Brazil. You probably do. Salt and ground pepper. And then for the outside, or for the filling, for the fritter part, you're going to have black eyed peas, garlic, onions, chili pepper, flour and salt, ground pepper, black pepper, and palm oil. So you make this thing by slicing the onions thin, then you fry them in the oil, and then you put shrimp, you saute the shrimp, then you take that aside. Then you make the fritters by draining the black-eyed peas, you place them in a food processor, chop it up with onion and garlic, remove the seeds and the white parts from the outside of a chili pepper, and also put that in the processor. Mix everything up. Then you heat palm oil again and you fry the fritters until they're lightly brown on each side. And then you split them in half and fill them with the onion and shrimp mixture. And then you serve it warm. Apparently, this is a popular Brazilian street food. Sounds delicious. Everybody gets some. I have to find some. I don't know where there's any Brazilian restaurants around me, but I will find them. Yeah, I probably have to go to the city, but that's fine. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so that's our dish of the week. And again, we're going to talk about oil a little bit later. We had an episode where we talked about the Orishas, but we're going to go through every single one eventually because that was an overview and it's not quite enough. Hi, everybody, and thank you for listening to the show. So I know you're wondering, what's the big deal about ratings and reviews and why is this woman always talking about them? Here's the thing. When you rate or review any podcast that you like, it gets more people to listen to it. It gets more recognized. It puts it out there. So I am here humbly asking you to please rate and or review the podcast. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, literally anything, it takes 5 seconds. Even if you want to go on my website, which is in the show notes and the link in my bio on any social media page, you will find a page where you can write a review on the website too. So it's completely up to you how you want to review. It's really easy. It does a lot for the podcast and we really, really appreciate it. Okay, thank you and continue to enjoy the show. There's so much to go into. So we're going to talk about our tea time. So we're going to learn something today. So most people have heard of High John the Conqueror root and John the Conqueror. Now, I've heard of like the root, but I didn't know who the hell John the Conqueror was. I didn't know it was like a person. I just thought that was the name of the herb. Mm-hmm. So I started to read a little bit about him. So one of the ethnographers, so these are people who study different ethnic groups, such as very famously Zora Neale Hurston. She said that John the Conqueror was a African slave who was perhaps a real person, but like a John Henry character where he was probably real, but there was like a lot of enhancements, lore around him. It was, and some people say, well, it may have all been fictional. It doesn't really matter. One note I want to make. When we talk about folklore and folk tales, people say, well, it didn't really happen. It doesn't matter, honestly. It doesn't matter. Right. What matters is the influence that those folk tales and that folklore have on the people. John the Conqueror was a character, whether he was real or not, who inspired people, who made people feel good, who made people want to persist and keep going. That's why it matters. So I don't care. If you come to me and you tell me, oh, so-and-so wasn't real, I don't care. Did it do something for the culture? Did it do something for those people and make them feel good? Yes, who cares? And you think of John the Conqueror and you think of all the other people, you think of Simon Bolivar and you think of, what's my man in Haiti? Oh my gosh.
Not Francois Macandal, huh? Are you talking about Macandal?
Him and who's the guy who liberated Haiti?
I can't think of it now.
It's okay. I'll go back and I'll add it because you guys are like screaming at the screen. That's okay. It doesn't matter. No. It does matter. But what I'm saying is characters like John the Conqueror inspired these people. And when you think of that, it helped people get through their day. So that's why I love.
I do too. And we've always tied it in with Frederick Douglass, right?
Yes.
In the woods. And so the way I've been taught is the root itself. You hear the story of Frederick Douglass and Sandy Jenkins and using the roots so he could go back when he went back to the plantation, not to have the beatings anymore and to fight for his own right as a man. Mm-hmm. And then my grandfather would always go into the High John the Conqueror root story. This African prince is what they said, who kept dreaming of this nightmarish hell that people were going through, who asked his father if he could be transported across the waters. And his father did not want him to. His father was a seer as well. And eventually he allowed him to go. And he said, I have to go and liberate the people. Yeah. So he gets there. And so then we have this analogy with the devil or Satan, who is already there and who is saying, he's collecting all these souls. And because people as they are working the plantations, picking cotton and sugar cane and stalking the sugar cane, they're saying, I can't do this. I just would rather die. And so when they kill themselves or ask to be killed or whatever, the devil gets their souls. So when John comes to the plantation, he starts to teach the people how to become maroons, how to leave, how to
Mm-hmm.
burn things, how to do things. And the devil loses all of these souls, right? And so he's, of
Yes.
course, he's pissed off,
Yeah.
And so he goes to John to try to strike a deal. And
Mm-hmm.
John says to him, no, I have a purpose. My
Mm-hmm.
purpose is liberation. So the devil goes and says, well, you know what? I know what I'll do. He brings his daughter, who is Lilith, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so she comes, and so the devil says, you're beautiful and everything. You can convince him. And so John sees her. She sees John. She falls madly in love. John loves her. But John's thinking, I still have a job to do. And
Yeah.
she starts to see and feel compassion for John. And so her compassion for John and what he's doing, and the fact that she doesn't believe that these people should be treated this way, she says, well, I'll help you. But my father, he's a strong man. He'll come
Mm-hmm.
after you. So John decides that he's going to whisper. He sees all these roots, right? He's going to
Mm-hmm.
whisper his story into the root. So the roots
Mm-hmm.
start to talk to the other root, right?
Yes.
They hop aboard the devil's favorite thoroughbred, and
Mm-hmm.
John says, we're going to go back to my homeland because it's protected, right? Your
Yes.
father can't get in there. So when the devil, who was taking a nap, thinking that they're doing his job for him, getting his souls, wakes up and sees that there are no souls there for him, and that the plantation is burning. People are still leaving the plantation. And he hears these roots. They're just talking and chanting this story of liberation. He's so angry, he burrows a hole into the ground and is never seen again. And so
Oh,
that's how we
wow.
understand the story of John the Conqueror. So yeah, like you say, it doesn't matter if he was a real person, the
Yeah.
liberation, the energy of it. And so we were always taught that a conqueror root always sits at your workings. No matter what hoodoo
Mm.
working you're doing, it always sits there in honor of John and in honor of all of our ancestors.
Yes. Oh gosh, I love that. This is so beautiful. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for telling that story because it's like
You're so
I didn't
welcome.
even I didn't even have that story. That is a good ass story. Yeah. I love it.
I always love that one. My grandfather,
Yeah.
when he was saying, who wants to hear? My brother would be like, I want to go play football. My sister's like, I want to get on the phone. I was like, I want to hear it. My sister's like, you heard that story 50 million times.
It's a good story. I'd like to hear it too. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So that is a background of John the Conqueror, and he also is sometimes seen as like a okay. So trickster. I hate when people use trickster as a baddie.
Yeah.
Tricksters are
Yeah.
not bad. Tricksters are just smart. Like
Yeah.
and Nancy is my homeboy, my love.
Mhm.
He's
Mhm.
he's a trickster, and Nancy wasn't like evil. He just like was like, I'm tired. I want to do everything quick. Like so,
Right. And we have them
Yeah.
in our families, right? They come over for holidays. the
Exactly.
trickster, But
Exactly.
at the end of the day, you're back in love with them.
Exactly. You love them because you're like, they're like that lovable scamp. You're like, ah, you ruined
Yeah.
everything, but it's fine. We love you.
Yeah. See you next holiday.
Exactly. That's how he was seen because he was
Mhm.
outwitting the masters. He's outwitting the plantation
Yeah.
owners and that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and
Yeah.
helping the slaves do little things to make
Yeah.
their lives
Yeah.
easier, to help them
Yeah.
escape, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
he was
And
great.
I like that he always allowed them to, even though he was there to give them that help, to see that you still have to do some work too. And a lot of the stories said Zora Neale Hurston, who I love, she always talked about as far as they had to see their way. They had to see a way. And he couldn't just do it all, but he
No.
brought you there. My father would say you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Absolutely.
And so that is the thing. And so that's what he did for them. He brought them there, but they had to figure it out. And so you always had people who didn't want to run, like with Harriet
Yes.
Tubman with the gun. You're going to get up and move. But you had people who were like, I'd rather just stay here. They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to take that chance. And so John the Conqueror allows us to take that chance. And even today with our magic, with this working with Hoodoo, you still have people who go, I don't want any part of that. And they have that. John gives
Yeah.
us that. You can accept it and come on into the fold, or you can stay over there and do what you've been doing. And hopefully it works for you.
Absolutely. And that is so important because, especially in cases like with slavery in the
Mhm.
Americas, the slaves had not been given agency over their own bodies. So for John to come and say, like, I'm here to liberate you, but it's up to you. Like, you do what you want. And also, when I'm trying to help you, this is what you are going to do to help yourself, because it's because they needed to be like, oh yeah, I am still completely in charge of myself and my own body, and I am a full person and I can do what I want. So I love how that comes into it, because it's so important to show like that these people were more than just people who needed to be freed. They were smart, intelligent people on their own right, and they could do everything they needed to do.
Right.
And he saw that in them, and that's beautiful. So one thing I loved that said, when he bet, he never lost. He would sometimes play dumb, but he wasn't outsmarted. He would play dumb because he wanted people to think he was dumb, but he wasn't. He was really smart. I'm like,
right.
Yeah. He'd be like, I don't know, but it was just to get over on people so he could get out of whatever he needs to do. And the words John over John or John the Conqueror are super, they're in itself, those words are a powerful protection spell for people. So the root, just like Mawiya just explained, it's a root that a lot of workers will put in their altar or in front of all their workings because, like you said, it's honoring John. The fresh John the Conqueror root has a unique, spicy fragrance, and it's reminiscent of like a cherry-scented pipe tobacco, cedar wood, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg. Ooh, I love that smell. Also, so be careful because if you don't ingest it, because it'll make you poop a lot. So don't do that. Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Instead, carry it around.
Unless you want to poop a lot, unless you're into that.
Unless you're having trouble, I guess. So, like, be careful. Instead, put it in your pocket, put it in your mojo bag, put it on your altar. A lot of people bring it to games where they're gambling or, you know, doing something for fun like that. Or also it's said to enhance personal sexual power.
Because of its shape too, because it's shaped like the male scrotum. So so usually people will say, they'll rub it with a little oil. Put it in their bedroom or put it under the mattress in the box spring. Put it in between there to bring that enhanced
energy.
Energy,
nice. Yeah. Okay, you guys got a little tip there. Everyone's running out to buy John the Conqueror right now. They're like, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh,
I feel them. Yeah, they're like,
it's used to draw money towards you, and I put a link in the show notes where you can see a lot of the really specific ways to do it. Also, get Conjuring the Calabash because there's tons of other ways to do stuff in there too. And there's also people do a lot of work with the root, and they use Psalm 23. Which is the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want that one. The Psalms, we all know, I have to do a whole episode on Psalms because the Psalms, it's
just magic. It's just witchcraft all the way.
It's just witchcraft in the Bible, everybody, if you didn't know.
Book, right? Put it up there with your other metaphysical books.
Basically, I know.
Right.
It's great. So a lot of people say that it's good to do workings with High John the Conqueror root during a waxing moon phase, but you can do it anytime that you want. But that's just a little tidbit if you want to do it during that. If you're into moon stuff, you can use oil. If you get like the Hoodoo oil that people make, you can be used to dress your bath, to dress a candle.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or if a lot of times if you don't have the chance to get to the oil, I often use like olive oil. I'll put olive oil in a jar and I'll put a root in there and I'll let it sit in there for about a couple of weeks. And I will use that oil as my High John the Conqueror oil. There's just a quick tip in case you don't want to go out and buy the oil or you can't get to it. You can do that as well.
Ooh, good tip. Yeah, everybody, you guys got a little olive oil you can spare. Everybody got it. I got mine from Aldi's the other day. So yeah, thank you. That's super good. Now you got another tidbit. There's all sorts of prep ways people make it. Some people you can find incense powders if you like, whichever way you like. But that's a really good way. Mawiyakai just said, like if you want to dress a candle with it, get your olive oil, soak it for a couple weeks, and you can dress a candle or whatever you'd like. You can even use it. Well, if it's an oil, probably don't want to use it too much on your clothes. But there's a little bit if you make like a water with it. I think there's a way. I don't know the way, but I'll put it on the show notes. You can make a water that you can put it in your laundry or whatnot. And when you clean up, and I always tell people when you clean up any incense or anything. Either you want to, depending on what you did, I like to put stuff in my backyard. If you have a little grassy area to put it, somewhere like somewhere that people aren't going to go. You don't have, if you want to throw it in the garbage, that's fine. I like to put stuff outside because I just feel better as long as it's biodegradable, obviously, but, it's still going to work. But don't always just throw stuff in the garbage. I don't know. It makes me nervous. Everyone's different. Yeah. But like, depending on if it's something like you're doing a magical working where you're like trying to get rid of something, then you can throw it in the garbage. But if it's something that you're trying to manifest, sometimes I would put it in your backyard or maybe not your backyard, but somewhere in like an area where there's grass that nobody's going to go digging around and talking to it. That's what I would say. So that's a little bit about the root. Again, there's way more specific stuff in this link that I put in the bio, so you can check all of that out. Okay, and we'll go to our story time next because I want to talk about Oya. Mawyiah is very familiar with Oya. So all of you, we're going to talk about her. We talked about the Orishas before, but like I said, there's so much going on with the Orishas that like one episode about all of them is not make sense. So we're always going to like go back and forth and we'll talk about different ones throughout the time that this podcast is on. So today we'll talk about Oya. So Oya is awesome. And she is the Orisha of the wind, storms, hurricanes, and the Orisha of the cemetery. So she also presides over healings and mediumships, any type of divination dealing with the dead. She presides over that. She's actually, which I thought was funny while I was like doing my research, she's like the only Orisha that was like, I'll deal with the dead. Because everyone else was like, I don't really want to talk. She was the one who's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. I got to do everything around here.
There's a story that goes, I heard this a long time ago by an older Oya priestess.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying how Yemenjah had the cemetery and Oya had the waters. And so Yemenjah was like, oh, can you watch the cemetery for me? I need to go and make a run like that. And Oya was like, okay, yeah, girl, I'll do it. And so she doesn't come back. And so finally, like, where is she? And after 9 nights, she's waiting and she's like, basically like, you got it. It was like, so some people will say she was tricked into having the cemetery, but she made the best of it. Yeah. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's like, yeah, my girlfriend tricked her. I was like, oh, I don't know, that's a girlfriend. But yeah, so go ahead. I just wanted to put that in there.
That's hilarious, actually. One thing I love and because anybody I know, like this story you just told me, all the stories I hear about the Orishas from different people who practice Santeria or Ifa or not, I always hear different stories and I love them. Number one, they're the best because the Orishas are just like hilarious sometimes. Like they're just like, they trick each other. They're like mad. Right. Yeah. They love each other, but then they're mad at each other, but then they're actually fine. Like they're out of a lot of the pantheons in the world, I feel like they're one of the most like relatable people.
Yes. And I think that from all of my study and my working with them, I think that a lot of it is, it's supposed to be that way. They're not supposed to be so omnipotent and inaccessible that we just, kind of thing. They're supposed to be like us and have our follies and do all the things that we do. And we get upset and we like things and whatever. Yes. They go through those same things and that makes them easy to relate to.
Absolutely. Yes. That's why they're hilarious and they're amazing. And it's like humans, but they all just have like magical powers. And I know. So when they get mad, they get like real mad. Like
right.
Yeah, exactly. And they cause hurricanes.
We're just wishing we could do something about it. They're like, oh yeah, I got you.
I love that. So in Venezuelan Espiritismo, she rules over justice and memory. She's often invoked for fertility, especially after a miscarriage, so like a rainbow baby. She's the mother of Abiku, which is the child that is born to die. A lot of her followers, some of them don't eat mutton, and there's like a story about that I'll tell you in a sec. She also cannot be worshipped. So on an altar. Now, everybody, if you know the Orishas, you know that there's a lot of, some people don't get along with this one and they don't get along with this one. So you can't put them all together. So here's the thing. With Oshun and Oya, to me, in my head, they don't hate each other, but they're just not like friends. So you don't want to put them next to each other on an altar because, they're not cool like that. And the reason is, let me tell you the tea. So what happened was, okay, if you also know the Orishas, this one's married to this one, but this one started friends with benefits with this one. It's a whole situation. So what happened was, apparently, and it's so funny because sometimes there's no timelines, they're gods. But anyway, okay. So this is a story. One time, Oya was a buffalo because she's a goddess and she could do whatever she wants. So she was a buffalo. And then Ogun was in the forest. Ogun is the guy who's always working. He's the god of work and iron. He's always working. He saw her and he saw the buffalo. He's like, oh, what a nice looking buffalo. And then she turned into this beautiful woman, Oya. And he was like, oh my God, she's so hot. So he followed Oya. She was walking through the forest and she goes into the market and she's buying stuff. And he walks up to her and he's like, hey. And she's like, hello. And he's like, I gotta marry you. And she's like, what? He's like, I just saw you were a buffalo. And she's like, what? And so she realizes that he saw her. And he's like, please marry me. Oh my gosh, you're the most beautiful woman. And like, you were a buffalo and that's really awesome. Please marry me. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll marry you, but you can never tell anybody I was a buffalo. And he's like, fine, no problem. Just marry me. So she marries him. Everything's fine, except it's not, because they go home and Ogun's already got some wives. So when they realize how much Ogun likes Oya, they're all annoyed and they don't like her. And they're like, there's something about Oya that we don't like. They can't put their finger on it, but they don't like her. So finally, I've heard this story 2 different ways. Either, and that's the beauty of folklore also, you'll hear the story 5 different ways. Either Oya and Ogun got in a fight and he brought up the fact like, well, you were a buffalo. Like, who knows? Or I heard the story that his other wives got him drunk. And then while they was drunk mouths sober true situation, they asked, they were like, so what's the situation with Oya? Why do we all think she's weird? And he's like, oh, because sometimes she's a buffalo. So then Oya, heard. And she's like, oh no, I told you not to tell anybody. And she goes and stays a buffalo and leaves Ogun. And he's sad about it, obviously. But I also heard, the other thing is Ogun's brother is Shango. And I heard that Oya may also have left Ogun because she got tired of going to work with him. She was like, you're so boring. All you do is work. And Shango is like a little more, at least to me, he's a little more flashy, a little bit more like the kind of guy who's like gonna like romance you and show you a little good time. Ogun, it's not like he's a bad guy. He just is really interested in working and working hard. Yeah, so she's like, no, your brother's way more fun. I'm going to go marry him and hang out with him. So that's also part of what had may happen. Now, the whole situation with Oshun is that Oshun was also married to Shango. And Oya is really smart and really like tactically good. So when it comes to war and stuff, she's on it. Oshun is like the one who's also really smart, but she's a really good cook. And Shango really likes that. He really likes her for that. And she is sometimes seen as Shango's favorite wife. So Oya didn't like that either. Even though sometimes Oshun is sleeping with Ogun on the side. It's crazy.
Right. Yes, it really is. And another story about the argument between the two is that they were going to prepare food for Shango, and another wife was going to come in, Yewa. She was going to come in. And they convince her, and they go back and forth. Oshuns and Oyas will go back and forth. No, your mama said it. Your mama did. So somebody convinced Yewa to cut off her ear and to serve it in Shango's food. Oh. And that he's going to really fall in love with you if you do that. And so she does that and brings it to him, and he sees that it's ear in there. And it's like, who did this? And so he like banishes her from his castle, and they're arguing. And so she's saying, but he said, no, she said it. And so there was this big argument. So they just go their separate. He doesn't manage them. They just go to their separate corners, and they're like mad at each other because of it. But to people who are children of Yewa, they always have their head covered, make sure their ears are covered in honor of her having lost an ear. And so, I find that a lot of daughters of Oya and daughters of Oshun, when they get together, they'll bring up the ear story. Like, especially in the presence of a Shango priest, right? Like, you're the one who did that. You did that kind of thing. But because she is, when we have hurricanes and thunderstorms and tornadoes, she's the one who rides alongside Shango. She is considered this great beauty, this wonderful. She just does these things. She can have all these men. She has this power as much as a man, this vigor as much as a man, which oftentimes upsets the other ladies, because it's like, you can be ladylike, but you can also do that. But we're just more ladylike than you are in those times. And I know for myself as an Oya priest, we have to, when there are storms, we have to make sure that we cover our windows and close our shutters and things like that. We're not to look into our mother's face when she is more destruction. So so that's what happened. So but I loved all those stories. I you know what? I love the stories, and I love the way you told them, because that's the way I always think of them as the tea. It's like, let me tell you, and my kids, when they were coming up in the Orisha culture, they loved the stories too. They were like, oh, look at this one and that one, because I would buy all these books. And there's this one guy, Chani Lili, he writes these books, and his stories are always so just like that. Let me tell you, kind of thing. And we would read them in the mornings. We would have a development hour, and the kids would love that. They would fall out laughing at the fact that how they just act like us. They get mad. They can do something about it. That kind of thing. And even with the one about Ogun, when you were talking about her being the buffalo, there's another story the same way on the same line where he removed the skins. She would put her buffalo skins in the tree, seal the tree up and go into market. And he removed the skins so that she would say she would marry him. And he said that he was going to hide the skins. And the women, when he got drunk, he was saying where the skins were. They went and found them and they were like, "You're buffalo," kind of thing. And she was like, "Oh my God, I told you." Yeah. So yeah, I love those. I love them all because it just shows how human they are and how we do a lot of the same things. We trust people that we shouldn't. We have all these relationships with people that maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should find somebody who's more compatible to us. We think we want the workaholic, but do we really? We want the fun guy. Is the fun guy good enough for us though? I don't know. Or the fun girl. And so we understand how all of that just works together. And yeah. I appreciate those stories.
I know, me too. And this is like a side note because it's another story that I absolutely love is when Ogun just like was in the forest working and everything else stopped working because he wouldn't go into the world and help people work. So like I'm not telling the story as accurate as it really is, but just stay with me, everybody. So he like was in the forest working with himself and everyone's like, "We need you to come back to the world." And he's like, "No, thank you." So he's in there. So Oshun was like, "Okay, no problem. I know what to do." Oshun, aka like the sensual goddess here, okay? So she's just like, "No problem. Hold on. I'm going to go in there and like look hot and shake it." And that's what she did. She just went in the forest and she's like, "Hey, Ogun." And he's like, "Oh, whoa, you look really hot." And she's like, "I know. Don't you want to come out the forest?" And he did.
Yep, that's it. That's that story.
And then they
drank honey. Yeah, that's that story.
Yeah, she covered herself in honey and walked around. And he was like, "Okay, no problem.
I'm coming. Okay, no problem."
I was like,
more ways than one. Yeah.
Your Orishas are so funny. So sorry, everybody. I just really like that story. It always makes me laugh. So also, Oya really loves librarian. She's also, we talked about her going to the market. She's also the goddess of the market and market women, especially. A lot of market women have altars to Oya because that's her domain. Female warriors, like Mawyiah was just talking about. She rides into battle with Shango. Cemetery workers and morticians also because she rules a cemetery. She can be a woman. She can be a buffalo. She usually wears 9 copper bracelets. Each of the Orishas kind of have a number. Hers is 9. Oshun is 5. And I forget the others. But I just know those 2. So then her color is maroon or purple or like a dark red sometimes. Her day is on Thursday. She loves copper. That's why she's got copper bracelets on. She loves antelopes, sheep, locusts, as well as buffalo. Her plants include camphor, cypress, mimosa, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool, and marigolds. And she, like I said before, she's the only, well, now we know she may have been tricked. She was tricked into dealing with the dead, but she's the only one who's dealing with the dead. She likes purple fruits, also like plums, red grapes, and her favorite vegetable is eggplant. So if you're looking to learn more about Oya, know that she's a purple girl. I'm a purple. I love purple. Oshun ended up being the one who talks to me a lot. I love you, Oshun. Oya is equally as awesome. They're both great. They just are on different sides of stuff. Anyway, that's it. So that's about Oya. So now you know more about the Orisha who deals with the hurricanes and the wind. And thank you. That's so interesting, Mawyiah, that about not looking into your mother's face. And I feel like that's a lot of religions and spiritual paths have that kind of tradition. Like you don't look directly. It makes sense, right? Like it's a respect thing. I
want to see. No.
Yeah. Also, like I'm terrified. Yeah.
Right.
In the most beautiful and loving way. We're terrified.
Right. Yeah. We're terrified of your beauty, but
your beauty and your intelligence, we're terrified. But we love you. Thank you. Oh gosh. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the show.
Maui, it's been so much fun. I feel like I could just hang out with you like all night.
I know. This has been such a good time.
Like we're just hanging out. We weren't even taping. Like what?
We're just chatting.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes, but go ahead.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I'm so happy because I feel the same way. This has been such a good time. Can you let us know where people can find you and anything you want to tell us about how people can hear more of your awesomeness?
Well, definitely my webpage, Mawyiah Kai El-Jamah. That's the quickest way to find me. I'm also on all the social media platforms with the same thing, Mawiyah. And so, yeah, that's the way they can find me. I'm always on there posting pictures or talking about something. I don't post altar pictures because I don't have that kind of time. I'm constantly changing things around. I see people do that and I go, oh man, they got a lot of time on their hands. But yeah, I try to talk a lot about hoodoo or whatever is going on as far as our community, Black and brown people. I talk a lot about the LGBTQ community. I have 2 queer daughters, and so I love them to pieces. So I'm fighting for them all the time. And I'm just doing my thing, trying to make it a fair and equal world for all of us, because I love all people. Yes. I just want us to love each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's awesome. And as always, all of Mawiyah's links will be all in the show notes, and you'll be able to link them real quick if you want to check it out. And your book is everywhere, so you can get the book anywhere. It's awesome. I just love how you show up for the Black and brown community and the LGBTQ community. It's just really beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, everybody. So thank you all for celebrating with us and hanging out, because I feel like this was a party for coming.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for the papers with you.
This is Dine with the Divine. We're on all the socials, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, YouTube. And if you like the show, if you don't mind pausing and giving us a rating, 5 stars is always preferable, but whatever you say it with your chest. And if you have any chest questions, comments, constructive critiques, or anything you want to tell me, feel free. You can email me at dinewiththedivinepod@gmail.com. And if you want to follow me, Ashley, I'm at SankofahHS. That's SANKOFAHS. On Instagram and all those other platforms, or Sankofa Healing Sanctuary on Facebook. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Mawiyah, again. And
thank you.
Yes, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.